All right, so welcome back into the live stream today. We're going to be breaking down a ton of different projects. We'll take a look at small coins, also do some analysis on some sentiment out there. We are, of course, tracking what's happening both with Bitcoin, Ethereum. We do see maybe some interesting things starting to roll into that. We might break down a little bit of that as well. So my name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Let's dive into it today, really starting with Polygon. Of course, many of the projects we'll talk about today, remember, the idea behind all of these is we'll build in some stories for you guys, give you guys a little bit of analysis behind the scenes based on some of the sentiment and amplification data that we watch, not investment advice for you. So make sure the key here is really kind of understanding why and how these projects have pumped and or are pumping, and how to identify these things in the future, because these are the keys that kind of help you in the process of getting into a point when it's early. And also knowing when to sell, because obviously if you're selling at the top, if you are doing a trade, that's one of the things and one of the strategies that we recommend all the time, at least this is what we practice, which is when you are going in and you see some quick market action, if it's not something that you're looking at for long term, then you should consider a certain amount of that position as being on the table. So it's something that we do all the time, and we love it. Let's get into Matic. One of the nice things that, of course, continues to surprise me is just the amount of news and also some of the projects that I think continue to drive into Matic. Here's a tweet right here from CryptoPunks2, which, of course, is jumping in now, minting while you can. And I think as we see more of the NFTs really starting to flow into the Matic ecosystem, I'm just really very bullish on where Matic will go in the long term, especially around metaverse, NFTs in general. I think this definitely, just because of the fact that we've had the Matic team on our show a couple of times, and I really like the direction in terms of roadmap, the team that they're building behind it, and then also the key thing here is partnerships. Partnerships, as we start to see that really building out, I think is going to be a big part of it. And if you look at just a little bit about their active addresses, 357, they're under the 400K. They just talked about this the other day. I wanted to show their blog post too. This was their week 11 insights, which if you guys aren't following many of these projects from a blog standpoint, I would jump into any of those. Almost every project out there has either a Medium, a Substack, or something that is usually in their profile on CoinMarketCap or on CoinGecko, whichever one you use. Go ahead and visit those projects, because reading into those, especially if you're investing in them, of course, but reading into what's happening on those, because most of these projects are very active on their blogs, but understanding what's happening within the ecosystem and also within their own organization, usually this is where it goes first. So you can kind of see their daily active user number report, 402,000. This was up about 4%. It's just a little under 402 right now. Their transactions per day, 2.85 million. This is very high. Revenue, 48K. And then you look at new contracts, 11.2K, very good. First-time contract creators, 2,000. So this is a big one with plus 15% right there. And then when you look at the DApp spotlights, this is another thing. Crazy Defense Heroes is 174,000 users. Decentral. Then you got QuickSwap, Pegaxi, Aave, and KyberSwap all coming in as their weekly aggregate of overall users on the DApp. So I think that is going to be one of the key things that they'll continue to grow on, is the DApp partnership. So seeing that really kind of develop in the ecosystem for Matic is a good one. Here's the Portis network building on Polygon. This was more news to connect dApps to any real world event. This is kind of cool in the essence of what they're trying to do, but integration of Portis is going to bring tons of advantage to every dApp built on Polygon for every single user. It could create the premises for fast adoption of the blockchain tech, giving it really kind of a real world business use case. And this, I think, let me zoom in on that a little bit. This, I think, could be a scenario where we start to see Polygon maybe getting some real world application development. And that's when you start to see a lot of Web 2 transitioning to Web 3. When you have those kinds of tracks coming into the space of blockchain and Web 3, that's a good thing, because you're going to start seeing real use cases in real world applications start to make their way into Web3. And I think that's where Protus is going to come in, or Portus is going to come in to the play. Let's take a look at where the chart is showing on Matic. This is one that we publish on the CPI. You'll notice this is a little bit of a downward trend right here on amplification and sentiment. When you look at AMP, obviously we had that little bit of a bump there, and then a little bit flat here. This week has been up. I anticipate we'll start to see this trending down based on historical and also based on some of the data that we pulled this morning on overall CPI. So something to keep a watchful eye on that. Another one that is moving is, of course, Chiliz, and that is based on Lionel Messi signing a $20 million deal. This is going to basically be the face of Chiliz, which I think is really good because of the Socios connection to what Chiliz is trying to do from a sports aspect, especially as it pertains to soccer. And I think just football in general, not American football, football in general, the size and scope of that and the opportunity that I think Chiliz brings to the table. We'd love to get Chiliz on, by the way. I've been asking AD to come on the show for quite a while, and I know he's busy. It sounds like he's out hobnobbing with all the great players to try to get the token out there really moving. The other thing is they announced the listing of the racing token. So again, this just goes back into Chiliz overall. Now, many people early on were looking at Chiliz as kind of not sure if this was a token that would hang around. I feel like based on what we're seeing so far, the amount of movement in terms of partnerships, but also their roadmap of building out tokens, I think this is one of those projects that I would probably start looking at a long-term hold on. And you do this on a handful of projects right now, especially as you get into some of these more specialized tokens. But Chiliz could be, especially in the sports scene, could be one of the early adopters and maybe could be the first mover position, which I think we see this a lot in different tokens. If you think about projects like Render or Remark, some of those that have been and will be, I think, out there for quite some time, especially in the metaverse side. Sports is going to be a big one. They kind of talk about it here. They're also more than willing to start experimenting with crypto, especially when it comes to sports industry. They're seeing, athletes in partnership in digital currencies. Many have promoted existing coins. Now Chiliz is going to add to the new sports tokens as it possibly become a go-to place for all sports fans. This is where I think it gets interesting for Chiliz, because if they can start to get effective in a couple of other verticals within sports outside of soccer, then you have something that is more of an entire ecosystem. This would be something I felt like should have been something like a Barstool Sports and maybe a Dave Portnoy would have done. And maybe this is a good opportunity for our Barstool and Chiliz to kind of come together, because this could be a big deal, especially if we start to see some very interesting creativity around where Chiliz could be going. Let's take a look here, and I think we're going to look at Chiliz in a minute here. I just want to look at a couple of other tokens. This is the Green Metaverse token, GMT. This is also starting to clock at all-time high, and this is one that I think from an overall standpoint, if you guys haven't, let me zoom up on this for you a little bit. If you guys haven't looked at this project called STEPN, basically it's an activity app. It is going the route of fitness. It is going the way of, I wouldn't call it sports, but in essence, it's looking at a different approach toward how blockchain could be used for personal fitness in the future. And I think that's going to be something that kind of flows into where the future might go. I wanted to jump to the Chiliz, back to the Chiliz real quick on the chart, because this is something that we watch on an ongoing basis. The sentiment as it was climbing over the past little bit here was on March 27th. The sentiment had held out 72.98, but AMP had gone up to 73.72, which obviously shows a fly, and that typically is when we see a token start to move when amplification goes a little higher. Same thing happened here, and this was right here on this little bit of a dip, which we always will score sentiment in a downward trend first and be looking for an opportunity to see if there's any movement. This one, of course, showed on March 28th a 74.99 with a 75.26 amplification. Again, quick movement, had a short top, and then has been adjusting back down. So even if you were in, let me see where that would leave you right now. you would still be right here, even though it's wicking down at about 11% over the past few days. So not a nice little, not a bad little move, but I did anticipate a little bit more of a pump with Messi signing on to this one. So let me jump back over to Steppen just to talk a little bit about what they're doing in terms of kind of the possibilities, where this might go. And again, they are one of those projects that it has been pumping. What I want you to do is, and we're running through a bunch of these today, but I want you to put these on your watch list over on whether you use CoinMarketCap or maybe a Gecko, whatever you use to watch tokens. Start to register against these and look at historical data, because historical data will start to showcase when and where you should be getting in. Some of these you're going to miss this run. Some of these may end up seeing additional pumps coming up. And some of these may be just getting on your radar for the first time. And this is the way you start to explore new projects and make a decision on whether or not you want to go into those kind of investments. Thor Chain, of course, is one that has been around for quite some time. Their roadmap is pretty incredible when you think about just what Rune has been able to do over the past few months. And also, in reality, over the past year. This is a project that has been around, and it also has been one, in terms of partnerships, has been very successful in inking together some pretty cool deals. But right here, more chains, Luna, getting into privacy tokens, and also more L2s, layer 2s, more wallets, all the big ones coming, which I think this will be a big advantage when they can really get into a lot more wallet applications, more integrations on DEX aggregators, and then synthetics, obviously, and then ThorFi, lending, saving, and I think that's going to be a big one, is when we start to see lending and saving inside the Thor or Rune ecosystem. So not stopping until decentralized liquidity, 10x bigger than centralized. I love their statements, and they always seem to be very, very active on Twitter, which I love about all these projects that really kind of get out there and share with their audience. This is the chart for Thor, which is, actually this was the chart for Steppen. Let me jump over to it before we go to Thor. But if you look at the chart for Steppen, I want to jump back to this one real quickly, of where you could have identified some of the movement. This was back here all the way early in March 21st. That was the big jump right here, a 72 and a 73 score, holding on. And then right here on March 25th, they had another little bump. And this one was, of course, 73 and a 72, a little bit softer. This means it's just tight. We'll probably see some flat action here, and that's what happened. Here was the 74.67. So you'll notice here it went from a 72.08 to a 73.56 to a 74.67 in a span of really just 7 days. So this is what indicates movement in the space. And the way that we do this when we're dropping data in our own CPI is we're scoring on these data points twice a week. Right now we do it with 15 tokens where you can look at historical data on the CPI. We're adding more tokens to the list. We're also going with some mid caps, and then we're also going to add a metaverse index in there for you guys to see this on historical data, which is exactly what we're showing you here with Steppen. The other thing I wanted to jump over here, back to Rune, and this was the other story I wanted to kind of bring back in, and some of these tabs were out of order, but closer look at Thor Chain's new synthetic asset, which I think, again, this is what they were talking about there on the Twitter account. Appreciated near 41% in the past 7 days. This, of course, coming from Cointelegraph Pro. And this is something that, again, we've continued to see these kinds of factors that have really played into kind of the future of where maybe synthetic could be going, especially around some of these addicts and or synthetics, as it plays into the overall project itself. I'm kind of interested have you guys invested in any synthetics or done anything in terms of research in that area? I'd love to kind of get your feedback. I have not gone down, other than Rune being a token that I have invested in the past. I'm just kind of curious if people are out there really looking at on a long-term basis. And then just a quick to the chart, and you'll see kind of where we identified right here. This was back on March 25th. Rune's move, because it had been flat there for a few days, went from a 72.55, and then this had a huge bump to 76.03. Large move here. And let's see what that growth was over the period of time. back up to here. So right at 50, almost 60% right there before it's had its dip here currently. So nice movement, but you'll notice here a couple of things that are a little bit more interesting. 72 to a 74, and the AMP score started to really level off at 75.02, and then a 74.81. So it's slowing right here, even though we did see a movement here, and an AMP score of 75.63, also slowing compared to what we had seen up here at 76. So when I look at AMP starting to slow in a chart like this, it's much like when we start to see money flow exiting. And if you guys use MarketCypher or any of the TA tools or watch some of our stuff with Evan, that's one of the things that we really watch quickly is obviously amplification has a direct impact to where money flow is going. So if you are using what we're doing on CPI in combination with something like a MarketCypher or anything that's really kind of tracking money flow overall, that is a good tool set to really understand all of these things going forward. All right, of course, I want to thank our sponsor today, and that is FTX. If you guys are looking for a new exchange or maybe looking to kind of expand some of your crypto holdings and do it in a way that's really cost efficient, FTX is one of the best ones out there. I would recommend checking them out. Their mobile app, super, love their mobile app. The other thing is of course, just the number of people and celebs that they have been able to get involved. I think this really shows a lot in the way of mass adoption when we start to see more and more people looking for, hey, what exchange should I get on? And I think with what FTX has done strategically from a marketing standpoint, very, very efficient and a lot of celebs going in that direction. Check out their NFT marketplace too, because this is another one I think we're going to see more and more coming from FTX, both on the gaming side and also on the NFT side of things. So watch out for cool stuff over on FTX. Make sure and click the link below. Helps the channel out. Hopefully it's going to help you guys out as well in reducing your fees on some of your trades. All right, so let's get into it. Everybody wants to talk about Zilliqa. We've talked a little bit about getting them on the show. We're going to try to get Sandra on again before the event, which is happening this week in Miami. So there's the Metapolis event, which will be happening. It's going to be good. I'm going to try to be there on Saturday night, and it's going to be a big to-do. I think this will be the key of really watching what Zilliqa's strategy is in a long-term position for their own metaverse platform. But more importantly, I'm very, very curious as to how this project is going to do in terms of partnerships. And when you think partnerships, I'm always referring back to this January 21st, 24th tweet. I don't know. Is there something there? I won't say anything about that. Let's go on. Let's get over here and take a look at Zilliqa's price, because this is the one that I think everybody's asking. I'm going to be fully transparent to you guys, is when Zilliqa went to 10 cents, I had a 50% exit on my position. I also put in a market or a limit order to sell at 12, and it executed on it, and mainly because Zilliqa had seen a nice pump. So I am looking for a new re-entry point, but it did take off there. Now the question is whether or not this is the top of where Zilliqa could be going from an investment strategy point. Now I look at this, again, key things happening with Zilliqa will be around this weekend and whether or not it is going to continue to move. Now if you look at their sentiment data, which is what we're watching very, very closely right now, sentiment all the way back here. Look at this, just back here on the 23rd, we had a 72.06 and amplification that was not performing at 67.25. It was pretty much flat for that week. Then we started to see amplification move right here on March 14th. Remember, this right here is back on January 24th, March 14th. Then we started seeing a lot of green candles starting to paint out, 73.82 and the AMP score of 74.12. Let me kind of just move those out because we are on the daily right here. So you can start to see those green candles starting to paint out. And then right here at the bottom of this red candle is when we pulled another action on data. And again, sentiment 75.43, up 2 points, and amplification score went to 74.87. Also not anticipating this kind of green candle. So this was still very peculiar to me to see this one move that quickly in such a short period of time. It is on another green candle after an adjustment yesterday. But we'll see how it's going to go. I think that, again, these kind of projects have to roll into showing performance, showing the partnerships, and then I think showing next steps in the roadmaps. These are all key on all of these projects that we're looking at today. This is another one that I think is interesting. Vinly has announced support for Ethereum, both on the layer 2 for Immutable X. This will be big because I think this could be the gateway for authentication through projects like Meta or Facebook or others that could be looking at integration into IMX and how that might look in the future. So lots happening there for sure. I know we got a poll coming up too. I'm not sure if the guys have pulled it up yet. But on IMX's chart, I want to jump into this one. Sentiment holding right now. This was back here. This one we've painted for a while. But if you look at where IMX was back here on February 24th, not solid on both sentiment and on AMP. We were seeing downward trend movement. We did see a big jump right here, though, and this, of course, was right here on March the 7th. IMX jumped to a 74.38 and a 75 amplification score, which began its upward trend. And if you look at that move from that period to where IMX is hovering at right now, 154% move right there over that period of time between March 7th and March 29th. Again, we pulled an additional data point right here on March 18th. Again, this is stuff that we're tracking on the CPI all the time. And this is where amplification started to over-index at 75, 22. And that, of course, gave us a nice track on where IMX was going. And then we pulled the last one right here on March 27th. Now, the difference here is that AMP has started to soften a little bit. And also, we're not seeing the kind of bigger moves between AMP, 75.03 to 22, and then back down to 75.07. This means to me we're going to start to see a little bit of flat action here. So if you did get in a little late here on IMX, I would either, if you're looking at a swing trade, I'd exit position. If you're looking at more of a long-term hold, then this may be one of those. Because if you look out from a big picture, this is still a pretty good price at $2.59 of where IMX is holding right now. Again, this goes back to the projects and the roadmaps of what that might look like for sure. All right, let's jump into the poll real quick, and then I'll jump over to our last one for the day, Veracity. Okay, we got IMX holding in at 27%, Zilliqa, wow, 30%, Thor Chain 21, and Chiliz 21. So most bullish on the short term, still Zilliqa holding in the IMX. So I would have to agree with those. I wouldn't know, however, if I had not seen Chiliz do a quick pop and a quick underscore, I still think Chiliz is a good project that you need to look at long term. It's one that I'm very intrigued with just because I like sports, and I think in general, someone's going to be the winner there. So it'll be interesting to see that go. All right, we'll talk about Veracity. Many people, we've talked about this project before, announcing that it will be supported by the upcoming Strike wallet, which is this is a big deal. So this gives you a fiat on and off ramp. That's a big thing with Strike. And then remember, Strike is the wallet that essentially helped Venezuela, El Salvador, jump into crypto. And I think when you have those kinds of integrations, these are all good news for the projects. And of course, multi-chain support, lots happening there. So I think this is a good move for Veracity. If you look at their overall, we haven't been tracking this one heavily, even though here recently, let me go to the day just to take a quick look here, and we'll zoom out a little bit to see where this one seems to be going. Squeeze that down a little bit. Yeah, because you're looking at back here on what was February 24th, we had a 72.55 on a 73.06 amp, and then it had jumped dramatically, and that was pulled in on March 24th, so that went to a 74.68 and a 75, and was up in a nice little jump there. So again, Veracity may be one of these that you want to look at more long-term. Again, many of these projects, a lot of these very related to metaverse gaming, etc., that kind of can lean in on some long-term strategies. The key here, again, this is something I do all the time, is you've got to jettison the lower 20% of your portfolio. This is a practice I do often, is sometimes I'll take losses on projects, or sometimes I'll just sell them at very minimal gains so that it can, basically vacate that position and then redo a position into something that I'm looking at more long term. Now, in bull markets, those are hard because everybody's trying to jump on the train and catch these. Be careful though; those are like trying to catch falling knives. It's tougher to do that unless you're tracking the token for a long period of time, which goes back to the whole point of staying on either the CPI or other methods in which you're looking at historical analysis so that you can start picking up these indicators that point to these potential rises in the case. So very, very big deal if going that direction. I want to take a quick look at XRP. Oh, by the way, guys, we have a big, or I want to take a look at Bitcoin. We have an XRP video coming up today with John Deaton, and we're going to talk a little bit about where XRP is going here in the short term and what that might mean in terms of a potential settlement and or a case resolution. So make sure and hang there. Let's jump over here to CoinMarketCap. And it looks like Bitcoin is definitely taking a dump for a little bit here, going from what was at 47.8 down here. It seems to have bounced a little at 47.1. I don't know if I would call that a big market correction, but it may be one that we need to be really watching close as we start to see this one fly out. And again, I think overall on Bitcoin, I'm still very bullish that we may be on a run here. So it's going to be interesting. And you know, the interesting thing, when you go back to the CPI, let me pull that up real quick. Let's see if I have it. Let me jump over here to the CPI and get up to Bitcoin. One thing that I'm always cautious of, I mean, even though we have seen a pretty big move here over the past, 2 weeks, it hasn't been dramatic, much like what we've seen in terms of a little bit of a dramatic move in terms of price. So even with that, I still look at that as a little bit of a hesitant position. My situation right now with Bitcoin is I'm not buying in on Bitcoin currently. Anything above, these 45 to really anything above 42 is probably a no-go for me, at least, even on a dollar cost average. I'm looking for the opportunity to add to the bags, which we've been doing here both on Ethereum and on Bitcoin under those rates. But I think long term, again, these are just, remember, you're trying to find these opportunities of buying and selling, knowing when to sell. Sometimes you don't hit the top, sometimes you're close, and sometimes you don't catch the bottom in terms of acquisition. But once you get into a comfortable position, maybe that's the place to go. Again, don't forget, we've got the XRP video coming up at 3, so it's going to be live with John. We'll get going. All right, so let's take a few questions. And Morphia, sorry, Zilliqa going to explode. So this will be a very big question of whether or not Zilliqa does explode after Metopolis, because I think they're going to release kind of the roadmap for it and maybe a couple of partnerships. That's my forecast. But it's more of a longer play for Zilliqa. So I think this is a timed roadmap for Zilliqa. So it could see some more incremental growth. But just be aware of that. For those of you, by the way, just as a tip, this is something that happened within the crypto pit, is if you're buying Zilliqa and staking it, there is a waiting period to get your tokens out to where you can sell them. So I think it's 14 days if I remember, is that correct? Yeah, somewhere around 14 days. So if you are buying Zilliqa and staking it, be on the cautious there, because you won't, once you pull it off the stake, you won't be able to sell that token for 2 weeks. So be aware of that. Evil Doom, Vulcan Forge. So we've looked at PYR a lot on this channel. It has been one that has been in our top 20 on the metaverse tokens for quite some time. It makes it in and out of the project. I know it has had some nice movements here recently, but definitely like that project too. Glimmer, haven't seen that one in a while. That's interesting. So like to see it, Glimmer. I'm still very, very bullish on a lot of what we've seen with Moon River and just in general their projects on Polkadot. I think those are, I think they just have, really good teams and a lot of potential future. It's not one I'm invested in currently though. G account, your thoughts on Raka? They tested their metaverse. This is one that I've looked at. I just can't get in on this project. I just don't see the team behind it. I would love for someone to maybe educate me more on what Raka is trying to do, because as a metaverse, there's just so much competition from really good quality projects that I think they're going to get just sucked up into the fray, unfortunately. All right, good vibes. Messi is a retiring athlete, not going to bring power to the Chiliz project. Chiliz is the next XRP. Okay, well, I think, the key here again is when you have plays like a Messi coming into a project like, look at it with Brady. Brady's showing more activity now in the crypto space, and that's a good thing, I think, for any of these partners. If they're that level, remember, if they're next level, I'm okay with that. I still think that only draws in other athletes because people look at those as pretty much goats, and anytime the goats are in the game, everybody kind of wants to follow along. So it's a good thing for them. Mira, if you had to enter a spot trade now, with which crypto will you trade for a short-term gain? Ooh, short-term gain. Man, I'm looking at a lot right now. The ones, though, that I would probably take a look at right now. What am I looking at that would really be outside? Let's take a look. Let's go over here to the chart, and we'll just take a look at the ones that I am going on. Okay, so Avalanche I feel like has pumped. I'm close to an exit on another bag on Avalanche. I think Cardano's going to slow down a little bit. DOT may be the one that I would go after, and the reason is this right here is, remember, DOT has not followed the market right here on overall market sentiment, which has been up this week, but DOT has kind of stabilized. Could it see a little bit of a pump? And remember, DOT is one of those that doesn't move in unison, or it feels like it doesn't move in unison with Bitcoin. So that might be one that I'd be looking at. The other one that I might look at, I don't know, Axie now is down again, and it's had a pretty good move up, but it's still a little pricey, but still at the same time, I think long-term for Axie, I know you're wanting a short-term play, but long-term for Axie, I would go there. I might go look at Render token one more time and see where Render is currently on both sentiment data and also just a little bit of their price action. So those would be three that I would kind of take a look at: Axie, Polkadot, and maybe Render. Boson Protocol. Interesting that you mentioned that, Maurice. We're going to try to have Boson team on to talk about Metaverse Fashion Week. I believe they're coming in this week on Thursday, so be on the lookout for that video. Illuvium staking V2 starts in 2 days. Yes, that is the case. We are hoping to have Kieran Warwick on the show again to talk about V2, how staking will work with Illuvium. So that could be a big video that you guys don't want to miss for sure. And then, yes, we know about the Ronin Hack, 625 million. I'm not sure if that data is on, but it is for sure 625. Maybe it's 625 million on that for sure. So be on the lookout for what's happening with Ronin. Again, this is one of those that it'll get fixed. I think those kinds of projects and also ties into some of these massive overall programs like what Axie is to the ecosystem of metaverse and gaming. I'm not worried about that at all. Solana, XI2 token is flying. Again, way up, depending on your position. Maybe you got in at Solana when it was down, and this is a great gain for you. Might take a little off the table if I were you. Is Meta partnership with Zilliqa possible? I just don't know. That would be an unbelievable partnership. Probably one of the best non-leaked secrets of blockchain 3 I think I would ever have seen. If that happens, everything is off the table and you have to reassess metaverse as a whole new era, because that would make a big deal. All right, XRP lovers are waiting. Yes, we're going to get you guys on the show for sure, and we're going to get John to answer some questions really around when we might see that settlement occur. Of course, if you guys want to hit me up on Twitter, it's @PaulBaron. And don't forget, get into the Diamond Circle. We do our giveaways via the email group, which is what we do our rewards with. And we also drop all things from content and additional how-to guides, all that kind of stuff over there. You can join with the link down below if you're catching this after the stream. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.